Git and GitHub are not part of the course competencies in this class, but I think it's important to touch upon them. If you go for a job interview as an entry-level programmer, most likely you're going to be asked about your experience with GitHub or some type of versioning control system. And that's what Git is. Git is a versioning control system. Why is this important? Well, let's say we're working on a large project. This project is going to take us 4 weeks, and so we work on week 1 and we save our project. And then the second week, we're making changes and saving our project. The third week, we're making some more changes, saving our project. In essence, we now have had 3 versions over those 3 weeks, but we've saved the project on top of each other throughout the process. In week 4, more changes, and now we in essence have had 4 versions of the software as we've created this. And then something comes up, maybe some scope creep or a wish of the client, and you want to go back to version 2 and make some changes starting back from there. Well, the problem is version 2 no longer exists. It's been overwritten with the 3rd version and the 4th version as you've progressed. What Git does is it takes snapshots of our project along the way that we can revert back to and start over from that version. That's why they call it a versioning control system. It also gives us a way to document the progress and the changes of the project along the way. There's software for doing this locally on your machine for both Windows and Mac and Linux, but most people use a cloud-based Git management system. GitHub is the most popular one out there, though others are GitLab and Bitbucket. We're going to focus on GitHub because GitHub is owned by Microsoft now, and they've made it tie in really well with Visual Studio. Another great use of GitHub is sharing across devices. My life is divided across several devices, and I'll do software development on a project maybe across 4 different devices. My home PC, I have a laptop, iMac running parallels with Visual Studio, and a work PC. Now I can transfer that project on a flash drive, but chances are I might lose that, and flash drives do occasionally go bad, and the same with an external hard drive. GitHub gives me a space to keep my project repository and be able to share that across all my 4 devices. Now the great thing about GitHub is not just for coding. You can use it for Word documents, for spreadsheets, for Adobe Photoshop images. And since it's cloud-based, you can access it with your phone or a tablet. So that's a personal use. Now when you set up GitHub, you can have private repositories and you can have public repositories. You can get to GitHub at github.com, and you'll need to create an account. The great thing is accounts are free for individuals and organizations. And you can create both public and private repositories. There's some limit into how much you can store and how many minutes a month you can use it. And so if you go beyond that, and you're especially working in a team environment, you'd probably want to subscribe to the team, or your company would subscribe to the enterprise. So to get started, you'll enter your email address and you'll sign up for GitHub. And as you would expect, there are some resources. You can go to the learning pathways, click on Learn, and there's documentation here to help you get started, and then how to do collaborative coding and so forth. And on YouTube, you'll find lots of videos that will go deeper than I do here in terms of learning Git and GitHub and using it with Microsoft Visual Studio. We saw in a previous lesson in talking about methods that we might assign different methods to different teams or different programmers to work on simultaneously. And GitHub is a great environment for making this happen, allowing different people to work on the same project at the same time, performing different tasks. Let me illustrate. I create a project on my computer. It's a local project, and this is referred to in GitHub terms as the origin. I can then publish that to a GitHub repository, and that's referred to as the master. I make changes to my program, and I sync it or push it to my GitHub repository, and that becomes a commit. Now it retains the master version and the commit version. I have planned all along that there are 3 issues that we need the three teams to work on. issue A, issue B, and issue C, and I'm going to have the red team, the green team, and the blue team. Those teams can then pull my commit or clone the project and make changes to it along the way. I've told the red team and the green team to go ahead and do that, and I've told the blue team to wait because I need to make more changes. So I make some changes, and that becomes commit 2. I want the blue team then to clone commit 2. Meanwhile, the green team has been working on their issue, and they push their solution to this point up to the GitHub repository, and this becomes branch B. But there's a commit there that we can now, as a team, look at and provide feedback as they do a code review. And then maybe the red team does the same thing. They provide commit 4, and that becomes a branch A. So finally, the blue team has cloned commit 2 and begin branch C. And along the way, the different teams continue to work on their project, providing new commits. And I, as the originator of this project, maybe make some changes, and that becomes commit 9. Teams continue to work. And then finally, the green teams on commit 11 says, hey, we're done with our issue. They send a pull request, and I can then pull their commit into my master project and merge the two together as commit 12 in this timeline. The red team continues to work, as does the blue team. And the blue team then issues a pull and merge request for commit 14, merge it into the master, and now I have commit 15. The red team finishes up their project and issues a pull and merge, and after review, merge that into my master program and commit 17. And now all 3 of those issues have been completed and merged into the master project. Let's look briefly at how to create a repository in GitHub from Visual Studio and how to pull a project. I created a simple project in Visual Studio in which the user can enter 2 numbers and get the sum of those numbers in a message box. There's my interface and my code. This is currently saved on my hard drive, and I want to put this up into GitHub. So we have a Git menu in Visual Studio, and I can choose Create Git Repository. And the dialog box that comes up allows me to specify the local path and then to create a new GitHub repository. I've already got my account set up here, and I can choose to make this private or I can make it public. I'm going to go ahead and make it public so that you can access this and play around with it. So it's going to be created as O8K GitHub test. I'm going to say create and push. I've jumped over to my GitHub account at github.com. I'm going to click on repositories, and here is that O8K GitHub test that I just uploaded. Notice it says it's public. I can click on it. It shows all the files that are part of this project. I can click on the code button over here, and I can open it with GitHub Desktop. I can also open it with Visual Studio, or I can download the zip. This is how I will share the next assignment with you. Is I'm going to put it up in GitHub and have you download the zip, unzip it, and open it in Visual Studio, or you can open it directly in Visual Studio. I'm going to go ahead and download the zip, and I can then open it in Windows. I'm going to extract it. So this is in my downloads folder. I'm going to double click on it here, double click on the solution file. That'll launch it in Visual Studio. Now a little problem here is it's got this VB in front of Form1 VB, so it's only going to open up the code file. If you go into the designer and you make just a simple change. So I'm going to take this label, it says enter number 1. I'm going to get rid of the 1. I'm going to come back and add the 1 back in. And I'm going to say to save that, so I'll close that file. And now that little VB goes away, and I can double click on the Form1 VB and get back to the designer mode. Just a little trick there that I have encountered several times. Now let's make some changes. I'm going to copy this button and paste let's have this one say get product. I'm going to name it BTN product. And I'm going to double click on it to code it. And what I'm going to do is just simply copy the code from BTN sum, paste, and we're going to make this a multiplication process of addition. And then I'll change my message box to say product, and the title will be product. And I'm just going to test it. So 15 times 3 is 45. 15 plus 3 is 18. That's how we can download a project from GitHub and look at somebody's code or make changes to it for ourselves. If you just jumped into this video, you can see all the videos from the Programming Practicum playlist by clicking on the image in the lower right. And if you'd like to be alerted to future videos I create, you can click my picture in the top right to subscribe to the channel.